Okay, what we'll do is we might make a little bit of a start. I think we're at, oh no, I might wait another few minutes because there's still a few more people coming in. This session is run by Acacia Consulting Services. We are recording the session. At the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A and we will edit out anything that is inappropriate to publish because we will be using this and publishing this on our YouTube channel. And we don't want any of your company names actually mentioned in that because that would be inappropriate. Okay. I think we've got nearly everyone there and it is 1:31, so let's make a start.
Cool, Tina. Just so people don't freak out.
Yeah. So the team that you're seeing in front of you is me. I'm the Managing Director of Acacia. I also am an MYOB EXO consultant and an Acumatica consultant. Tonya Say, who is also an MYOB EXO consultant and also an Acumatica consultant. And Louise has probably only joined us in the last 5 years. So, you know, she's an Acumatica client because we're focusing her skills on Acumatica. The agenda for today is pretty simple. We've covered off the introductions. We'll do a disclaimer. We'll then take you through a process. I'm just going to mute someone if we can.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's done. Thank you.
Yep.
We'll take you through the end of year payroll process. We'll then talk about STP and the reconciliation things that you need to consider or at least do as part of your process. Like we would always say to you, it's always best to reconcile. And quite frankly, you should be starting to reconcile now so that you're aware of any weird stuff. Then we'll talk about the compliance updates. We will then talk about Payday Super and that compliance that's associated with that, and then actually step you through that process. And then at the end, we're going to have some time for Q&A. Now, we will be swapping between this presentation and also screens in our demonstration database, just so that you can see that. And then there's some screens that we can't actually show you because we don't have a live payroll. So we'll actually be swapping and showing you some screenshots from a site that we have obscured all the details of the company that we're working with. Just as a disclaimer, and I always love a good disclaimer, this is generic. This is not specific to your company. You need to consider that, and you also need to understand that we are not BAS agents. So you should take any of these questions to either Fair Work or to your accountant if it's anything that's associated to your BAS statement. Okay, and with that, we will head on to the first slide. He says confidently. So over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Di. So today we're going to work through the end of year process, which is in 6 steps. As you can see, we're going to start at looking at the FBT. Then you will work through to finalising your last pay for this year. We'll review pay items that are the ATO STP categories. And then we will look at reconciling your STP to your payroll and ultimately to your general ledger. Once all of those things are done, then we're in a position that we can actually do the STP finalisation, which needs to be done by the 14th of July. Following that, then we're entering the new year and then we'll be concerned with the compliance updates. Thanks, Di. So the first thing we're going to talk about is FBT. There's a number of steps that we have to do. We have to make sure that we have pay items that are set up, and we'll be taking you to a couple of screenshots in a moment. With FBT, there are multiple pay items that you may or may not need depending upon what setup there is. And once you've got that information from your accountant, you do need to confirm which one of those 4 options that you're going to be using. From there, you would process a fringe benefits pay, and you need to have its own pay group, and we'll show you that as well. And then finally, you will run a pay run with specifically a fringe benefits financial year, which is running from the 1st of April through to the 31st of March, with a physical pay date of the 30th of June. So Di, if you'd just like to flick to the, yep.
I'll just say one thing. This is going to be recorded, so you will have access to this as a recording, and we'll also be sharing with you the slides so that you do have access to that as well. So let me swap to a pre-prepared screenshot with the information that we're talking about. So let me just swap to here.
Yep. So in a pay item screen, if you do a search and in the little search bar type in Fringe, if you've already got a couple of Fringe benefits pay items set up, you can hopefully see one or two existing there. And if you could just drill into one of these Fringe benefit setups. So you may only have one that you end up using according to the information that your accountant gives you. And all of the magic happens on the second page, which is the additional information. And in the lower half of the screen, you can see whether or not the Fringe benefit is either a grossed up amount that you're going to be punching in or not, and whether or not the Fringe benefits is exempt or not. So the four different options that we had on the screen are really just a combination of those little tick boxes, and that will be dictated by how that information is coming to you from your accountant. You just need to make sure you clarify with them. If they give you a figure, you need to confirm whether that is a grossed up figure or not. And the handy hint I've always used is ask your accountant for both figures, the grossed up and the non-grossed up figure, and then that way you know exactly which one he's giving you or he or she's giving you. Thanks, Di. If you could go to the Pay Groups tab there, please. So we spoke about pay groups. So here you can set up a pay group for the Fringe benefits under your pay groups section. And the way we set it up, we will set it up for annual. So it's got a name. It's set up with a pay frequency of annual. And then looking at the dates, we've set up the last pay period, which would have been the 24 to 25 last year and paid last year on the 30th of June 25. So that is the normal setting for now, because then when you run your Fringe benefits pay run, it'll update those with this year's dates. Thank you. And back to the...
I'm juggling 6 balls at once, Louise.
That's okay. All right, so that's all I was going to say on Fringe benefits. We do have a very detailed procedure that is available from MYOB itself, but if you've run it last year, it's really the same process. Process hasn't changed, and that's it. All right, so finalising step 2 of our 6-step process is finalising your pay. So the last pay, you want to make sure you process the last pay. And what we mean by the last pay is it's the last physical pay for the year. Now, that is not one that is paid on the 1st of July. The physical pay date is what matters. So if your pay period, pay starting date and pay period end date is in June, and is paid on the 29th of June, paid on the 30th of June, then that is regarded as part of your financial year. If it is a pay period that is ending on the 30th of June, but paid on the 1st or the 2nd of July or after, that is actually next year's. That's the 26-27 year. So just make sure that you're aware of that, because you don't want to have 27 27 fortnights, or 53, 54 weeks in the year, as it can upset some of the employees.
Having said that, Acacia has that this year, and I've forgotten to tell all of you that our last pay is on the 30th of June, and it is the 27th fortnight in the year.
There you go.
Whoops.
So when you know you've done your last pay, do double check that the STP submission has gone through and has been accepted, so that if there's any potential errors or issues there, that you can deal with that prior to actually doing the next steps in finalising it. Thank you. So the things that I'm going to talk about now, this whole reconciliation and the checking of things, these can be done now. You don't need to wait until the last pay. And by the same token, you could make sure that you even do this on a quarterly basis, some of these things, knowing that you're reconciling as you go through the year. So the first setup that we want to cross-check is to look at the pay item liabilities, where we will be checking to see what the gross income and liable for super and payroll tax settings are. And we need to check that our ATO STP categories are correct as well, according to the guidelines. And if we're accruing work cover, making sure that we've got the liable for work cover flag. So Di, if you'd just like to slip over to that screen for the pay item liabilities.
And one other thing I should have said is if you've got any questions, just pop them into the chat now. We won't answer them immediately now, but you know, if you're going to forget them, pop them into a chat and we'll look at them later on. So if we look at the pay item liabilities.
Yeah. So the pay item liabilities is a very busy screen, and not only is it busy, but it is very easy to accidentally change. So be very careful where you click. So whenever I'm on this screen, I always tend to click on the left-hand side of it, so that you're just highlighting rows rather than clicking anywhere else. So on any of the pay items, so if you just pick salary, the salary line halfway down. So Di's just clicked on it, so at least it's highlighted. And on this screen, you've got various columns, ones that are saying whether or not it's included in gross earnings, whether or not it's liable for work cover or not, whether or not it's liable for super. We've got a new column called qualified earnings, which Tonya will talk about later. Whether or not the gross income is there, and then you've also got a payroll tax column. The final column is the ATO category, and if you'd just like to click on the gross payments for the ATO category.
Yep.
Thank you. Click there and use the looking glass. And in here you've got the various categories for the ATO, etc. So most of the time, these of course should be set up correctly, but if you have added new pay items, you need to make sure that those pay items are correct. And if you are unsure of what it should be, whilst we can guide you, we are not official BAS agents, so you definitely need to cross-check that with your accountant. But primarily, if you're looking at allowances, there's many different allowances, and you've got the gross payments, you've got overtime that is separated nowadays, you've got bonuses that are separated, super separated, and I'm forgetting one of them, leave is also separated. So all of them are very different. And certainly with STP2, all of those things are just getting more and more detailed. So it's definitely good to revisit it. I did see there was a little pop-up there from one of our users saying, what if the code is incorrect? That's perfectly fine. If you notice that it is incorrect, you can change it when you notice that it is incorrect. And as long as we do an STP update, as well as a STP finalisation later, we can actually, that will actually fix it.
Sorry, Louise, could I just mention, when you do make that ATO category change, under the 3 dots button, up the top left-hand side, under where it says pay item liabilities,
yep,
you update historical or update pay history, and that will backflash that setting change.
Yep.
So I'm making these, what do you call it? I was making them favourites. So instead of them being as the 3 as the radio button, there it's actually then available to me on this screen. So that's another little tip that makes things a little bit easier to not make the screen so cluttered, but to give you the info that you need at the point in time you need it.
So it's very important that you do that. Next time, Tom, thank you. Okay.
Back to the presentation.
Yes, please.
And next screen. I'm on top of it.
You are. Thank you. All right, so I've got a phone going in my background, so just ignore that. On this screen, we're just going to talk about the payroll to STP reviewing. So we need to do this in 4 different little steps. So we will submit the STP finalisation preview, and I'll show you what that screen looks like. And that prepares data values that we can then cross-check. And we're going to do that by exporting the STP preview information. From there, we will look at the payroll reports themselves, particularly a summary by employee report. And then what we want you doing is reconciling and making sure that the STP and the payroll are matching. The primary thing that we're doing here is checking that, and ultimately what's been highlighted is if your ATO category is incorrect, or if you've got something pre or post-tax that's not quite right, then this reconciliation will help highlight that. Okay, we can flick back to the screens.
That one to the finalisation screen.
Yep. Now the STP finalisation screen, you can see the example we've got. This is currently greyed out. This is also demo software, so we can't have STP switched on in here. But if in your system, once you've selected some information down in the lower part of the screen, like finalise which year, etc., if that preview finalisation button is not there, that is actually just a setting in the payroll preferences, which you can switch on yourself, which is under the STP tab in the payroll preferences. So it is a newish feature. I think it only came to us last year, but it's
Correct.
a great one to have, and we've been using it an awful lot. Okay.
Did you want me to show that Word doc?
Yes, please. That's a good example of that Word doc, the top.
So again, because we can't actually have it shown to you, is that the one?
Up,
no, that's the other one. Sorry, let me just go back up again.
All right. So here we have where this is switched on in some data. And once I selected the financial year and made sure that I had inactive employees ticked on the right-hand side, and made some selections in the lower part of the screen with making sure that I'd selected all of the employees, then the preview finalisation button lit up. And then once I click that, it will actually prepare a preview finalisation batch, and we'll just flick down to that.
The next screen?
Yep, down below.
Yep.
So on this screen, this is where I have pressed the preview button. It's actually prepared a STP batch like any other batch, but this batch status is preview. So on here, you've got the various tabs. I've only clicked on the remuneration tab to give you an example. That will have values on it. And to export information from this, you can click on the Excel button on each of the tabs. Unfortunately, we don't have an easy way of doing all of those many tabs all at once. So click on the Excel button. That will export the information so that you know exactly what is in the STP batch itself. Now,
go on.
If you notice anything is wrong with this STP preview, you can redo it as many times as you need. If you've gone off and made changes to the ATO categories like we spoke about before, you can come back and redo the STP preview, and it doesn't matter if the previews sit there. It'll create a brand new batch each and every time, and it's only when you know it's correct that you may, when you're ready to do your finalisation, you might actually press the button to send it to the ATO.
So when I do the reconciliation for Acacia, I actually have one massive big Excel spreadsheet, and I have each of these areas as different tabs, and then I'm reconciling it back to a main file that I'm checking with the ATO. Yeah. I just find that having these different tabs on the one Excel spreadsheet makes it a lot easier when someone comes back to me and says, hold on, something doesn't reconcile, what are you doing? Because that's what the accountant normally does to me. So just keep that in mind. If you can have as much information stored in a file and you make as many notes as you can in that Excel document, it means that when they come back to you in 2 years' time, you go, yeah, no, I did that because X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, if for whatever reason it's not matching and you need our assistance, having all of this prepared in an Excel file just makes our life easier as well, which we appreciate.
Exactly.
Thank you,
back to the presentation.
No, we're going to go to the
that one.
Yes. All right. So one of the reports that we like to use is the Pay STP Reconciliation report. So it will display, if you look at it, it will display, in this case, if we look at the James person, the first 5 or 6 lines, you'll see the different lines that make up his pay, his salary, his annual leave, his super, etc. So this is a raw data, if you like, of all of the information that is in your payroll. And if you just scroll to the right, Di, I just wanted to clarify why we'd call it an STP. Yes, all right. So you can see on the very right, the reason we call this an STP reconciliation is that you can use this to see what it was recorded as at the ATO. So if there's a difference between our STP and our payroll, this is going to help us immensely to try and sort that out. Now, we have added an employee tab on this screen. Now, this is as a result of creating what's known as a pivot. And that can be created. If you don't have one of these on your screen, you can create it by clicking on that little funnel icon on the right-hand side, which when you're on the All Records tab, that will allow you to create this pivot. Now, in this particular case, the pivot that we've set up, if you can make it a little bit wider, it's just, yeah. I mean, obviously, you could do this in Excel if you've exported it, but by the same token, it's doing it for you. And you can see it's giving you a subtotal for everything for that employee. So that's just another way of viewing the information. When you've got that on the screen, you've got the Excel button at the top of the screen that you can spit that out to Excel if you wish. Okay. The other report that we're going to use, if you go to the next screen, Di.
I just have a little thing in the way. Let me just get there. That's the same one.
The same one. That's all right. So we'll close one of them.
I probably got a bit enthusiastic, Louise.
All good. So the other next report I want to talk about is the Pay Activity Summary Report. So the STP reconciliation is a raw data type of report. It's more a screen inquiry. This report is, as it's named, is a report. It's hard-coded into the program. Now, this report is flexible. So what I like to do here is make sure that you pick the right combination of ticks to do. So normally the open pay run would not be ticked. The completed pay runs would be ticked. You wouldn't need the cancelled ones, and you would want the reversed ones. Maybe, maybe not. We don't generally have reversed pay, so we might exclude that. Di, please. Then in the lower part of the screen, you've got your physical pay date. At the moment, Di, you'll need to change that opening date to 1st of July 2020 or something. This is demo
2025.
2025, thanks. That'll do. And the grouping that you might need to do, when in doubt, just type it in. The grouping that you need to do is, I would actually look, well, by department might be okay. We're going to run it twice, so I can actually show you. We might run it by department or branch. Department's good. So let's try running that.
And one of the things that you can do, which is a standard feature of Acumatica, is you could save this as a template. So you can give it a name when you save it as a template. So you'll notice I very cleverly named it as for presentation. You could actually have something a little bit meaningful, which says group by department, group by branch. But doing that as a saved setting helps you next year when you go to try and run this report again. And on every single report, you can save these parameters. It just makes things a lot easier. So just a word of warning, we are on a sample database and unfortunately it's on a very slow setting. So our server is quite slow.
Yep.
So what would you like me to look at, Louise?
So in this report, as we said, this is a report based on departments. And so it is giving us a heading for that department and then and a total for that department, and then giving us all of the employees in that department. So this is, as we said, it's a summary report, but it's by department. Di, if you'd like to now go back onto the pencil, and we'll go back to the settings again.
I'll just say one thing about this report. It's a little bit weird in that the totals are at the top. So this is the total of the overall report, and then beside each of these headings is the total for that branch or department. So if we now come back again and do as Louise said, let's swap here.
And we're going to go posting class.
Oh, per posting class, goodness me.
And the reason I do the posting class one is because one of the next steps that we're going to be looking at is balancing this to the general ledger. So why not have something that's in sequence for the general ledger? So in this particular case, it should be totaling exactly the same amount of dollars. But in this case, those posting classes will generally be meaningful for you. So it may be if your wages are being distributed against your general ledger against different departments or different costings. That can be, sub-departments or whichever it might be. So those posting classes in this particular pay run are meaningful. So that's the most good example of how you use this activity summary report. So it just highlights the whole payroll per se with what's been declared in the payroll as opposed to what's been declared in the STP. Once again, you can export this to Excel. And we recommend that you do that and bring it all into that one big reconciliation Excel file that you're working with. Okay, so the final, that's all. We can go back to the slideshow. And just the final point on this little checklist here, the reconciliation of the payroll totals to the STP. Make sure you do it for each employee. Obviously, check the overall totals, but obviously you can check the individual employees, particularly when they've got pre-tax deductions. Thank you. I've written down my notes on what screen to look at, and I think we've already covered it.
Okay, that's fine.
So with the reconciliation of the STP, so they're just a couple of checkpoints, making sure that your gross income, very good advice there, gross income is including earnings, including the director's fees, bonuses, overtime and paid leave, and then making sure that the allowances align with all of the different allowances for the ATO. Now, in particular, with some of the allowances, some allowances need to be part of the gross wage or need to be detailed, because let's say if an employee is doing a kilometre allowance for their car, they can actually claim that back on their tax return. So that needs to be identified clearly and not just absorbed in the gross income. So cross-checking those things as well. And making sure that your employer super is the 12%. Nothing worse than finding out something hasn't been calculated and only finding out that, someone's been short paid on some of their earnings for the whole year with the 12% as well. Thank you. All right, so the next thing is, what if it doesn't balance? So with the payroll reports that we did, making sure that we use the physical pay date and not the pay period end date. And that just all harks back to what the pay date was, whether or not we had a pay run that was paid 1st of July 2025 versus the 1st of July 2026, etc. Making sure that if you've on your payroll reports, you are picking that it's a physical pay date that you're working with when you then apply your 1st of July to 30th of June reports. Now, cancelled pay and reverse pays should be excluded, as we showed you on the payroll report screen. Cancelled pays shouldn't have any value at the STP anyway, but from a normal audit point of view, the MYOB program, of course, keeps all of the cancelled pays and any reverse pays for proper audit tracking. So, but we, of course, don't include those in any of the STP. Once again, the pay item configuration, the STP2 categories, and updating that historical transactions if there have been changes made. And even if you're not sure whether changes have been made, running that won't hurt anything if you've changed the STP codes. Reconfirming the STP totals by doing yet another preview. As I said, you can run as many of those previews as you need to do. Thank you, Di.
Did you want to look at any of those screens? Or right?
Yes, I have. Yes, there was two that I don't think that I've given you.
I know, I don't think you have.
No.
I think they come back to what we were talking about. So there is also a pay activity summary report that's available.
You can click on the payroll reports just on the bottom left. Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
So on this screen here in the middle, yeah. So there's a pay activity. You can see the pay activity detail data, and you can see pay activity summary data. And then the report version of those as well. So there's a number of different reports that you can run to just help you whittle through the information that may or may not be balancing. If something's not right, you can look at it month by month, perhaps, as well.
That's what I do.
All right. We'll pop over back to the slideshow. Thank you. All right, so assuming now that your payroll and STP are balancing, the next thing we want to do is make sure that everything that's happened in the payroll has landed in the general ledger and hopefully in the right spots in the general ledger. So once again, we talk about the payroll reports that you can run in summary and in detail. So we showed you the summary one and how you can do it by posting class, which will help break it up into the general ledger accounts. You'll be able to reconcile your gross wages. Now, those gross wages accounts may include allowances. You may have allowances that are separated in your general ledger for whatever reason. The bonuses may even be separated, or they all may be going to exactly the same general ledger account. The superannuation, most of the time that's going to a separate general ledger account, so you want that to be, matching that 12% figure that you have paid into the ATO. And then the final thing that we want to do is check the clearing accounts. So the PAYG clearing account, you'll have a superannuation clearing account. They will be in the balance sheet area, and typically they return to zero, approximately every month. But they may not be zero quite yet. They may have 1 month's worth, as an example, if the PAYG hasn't as yet been paid. And so what we want you to do is at least look at those, and if it's If it's zero, fantastic. If it's not zero, then we want to see, is it equal to this last month that I haven't paid? If it's not equal to that, well, then obviously you've got to do some extra checking.
Again, with just to talk about my experience with this is when I actually export all the payroll accounts in from the general ledger, I actually do color coding and actually match up the accrual of the amount and then the payment of the amount, and just double check that they all come back to zero, each accruing against the payment. Okay.
Okay, so next slide, please. Now, if the payroll doesn't balance to the general ledger, here are some points again to see what could be causing those issues. Once again, you know, making sure that all the journals, which normally are released automatically to the general ledger, have been done. Sometimes if someone has done a journal manually and affected wage accounts, etc., that can sometimes cause it to be out. Again, the payroll reports need to make sure that we're using the physical pay date. And as I said, the check for any non-payroll related entries that may be sitting in those general ledger accounts. If that doesn't balance, then breaking it down and doing a month-by-month reconciliation will hopefully sort it out. And if all of that doesn't balance, basically what you need to do is find out from your finance department if it's okay to proceed without the reconciliation between the payroll and the general ledger. So I'll just explain that a little bit more, is that from a STP finalisation point of view, we've balanced the payroll and we've balanced the STP to the payroll, which means it's all good. If the payroll itself doesn't match to the general ledger, most of the time that would be fair to say that it's a general ledger issue, not a payroll issue. Di, would you like to comment on that? Is that fair enough?
So typically the reasons why these don't balance is because someone, either you might be using a different accounting platform to the payroll platform, or in our case for Acacia, we actually have the payroll in a different tenant than we have the actual Acacia general ledger stuff. And so I provide information for journals each month, but if one of those journals has been miskeyed or, you know, something like that, it can occur where things go to balance. And typically I find that the main reason why things are out of balance is because people have unfortunately plopped an entry into a payroll related GL account code by accident. So they've popped something to wages or they've popped something to superannuation. But and look, we can help you try to isolate these things. But if you can start and do some of the research yourself, you can actually save yourself time, money, effort, etc.
Yeah, the main thing we want is that if it doesn't balance, like we always appreciate that you try and get it balanced before you do finalise the STP. But if it doesn't balance, we don't want the general ledger imbalance to hold off the actual finalisation of the STP.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next screen. Well, I've gone on to the next screen.
Yes, that's right. I was just looking at the
couple of comments.
Questions. Yeah, was it?
That's all right. We'll come back to those, or Louise or Tonya can answer them at the end.
Yeah. All right. So the STP finalisation. So in a perfect world, we've done our payroll to our STP reconciliation, and that's nice. Then the next step, we've completed our ledger reconciliation. And as I said, if it's not balancing, there is no need to stop and not do the next step, which is submitting or finalising your STP by the 14th of July. And I think a lot of the times you get pressure by the employees who want to do their tax returns. You'll get pressure to do it even before then. So that's why even, you know, we recommend if it's possible to start doing your reconciliation way ahead of time so that you're ahead of the game.
Okay.
And I think that's all for me. After you've done that, congratulations, you've finished the end of year, which means next concern is what do I do from the 1st of July? Over to you, Tonya.
Thank you. Okay. Before we do talk about what we do for the coming financial year, just for those clients that have transitioned to Acumatica Payroll during this partway through this current financial year, the 25-26 financial year, please keep in mind that you may need to do a finalisation in your old payroll system. So the two things would be, have you already done that? Now, when you first transitioned from your old system to Acumatica Payroll, you may have finalised the old system then and there. Great. The other option, which very few people do, because it's quite a bit fiddly and a bit complex to get it right, if you were to bring in the year-to-date balances into Acumatica and used the previous BMS IDs with previous employee IDs for the information that gets communicated to the ATO, then you would not need to do a finalisation in your old payroll system. As I said, very few people do it. Majority start Acumatica with a clean slate, which means you do. You will have to do a finalisation, a reconciliation, and then a finalisation in your legacy system, and a reconciliation and a finalisation in your Acumatica payroll system. So if you have any questions, particularly if you're your previous payroll system with EXO, please sing out. I do have a checklist for the EXO payroll system that you could run through. It's the same one that we've done year on year to help you with that reconciliation and then the finalisation. But moving on to the coming financial year, so the 26-27 year. So in terms of the key changes that we're looking at, split it up in between automatic updates and manual updates. So with the wonderful thing with Acumatica being a cloud solution, MYOB can automatically manage some of the key threshold and compliance requirements, so the new tax rate. So there's a very slight change that's coming in 1 July. MYOB's, I get the right word, dynamic calculation engine, the DCE, that will automatically apply those tax rate changes. The employment termination payment caps, again, threshold based, they get applied automatically. And then the superannuation threshold, and I've got a little asterisk there. The threshold can be applied.
We've got some info on the next page.
Yep, or can be applied automatically. You do have to tick that you're wanting to actually utilise that threshold and that you're wanting to utilise the default system threshold and not have something else applied. So anything that's really compliant will happen automatically. The manual updates, they would be things where essentially the pay rate. So as we've all heard, Fair Work have come through and said, yep, a 4.75% minimum wage increase from 1 July 26. So that has to be done manually because obviously it doesn't apply to every business and doesn't apply to every employee. What we do recommend is if you are having to put through that pay increase or any pay increase, we do highly recommend you use a historical pay rate pay group in your employees' pay detail screen, just so you can keep a record of what it was. You keep your existing pay group as your live one, you do the update in there, and you insert a new record for the historical information. Now, again, if you've got any questions, please sing out. But there are the key changes. If we jump,
Did you want me to show the pay group screen?
I don't think it's one we had open and ready to. Oh, if we do,
We do.
yep,
we do.
we can do. Beautiful. Here's one we prepared earlier. So you can see there we've got a Z history in our demo system. Yours might be called something. I've seen a few different varieties of that naming out there. And it's just ensuring then that you use that in the pay details tab of your employee. So in our demo, we haven't got any examples of that. But yeah, so, and if you don't have a history, please, there's a little plus icon there, create one to keep that information.
Tonya, could you also talk to the pay item for the superannuation, just about the threshold, so people can check whether the threshold is switched on or off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Had issues where the threshold was inadvertently switched off for some clients during the year, and then either they were overpaying or underpaying a superannuation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the full thank you.
This is just to show that we can, pivot on the drop of a hat and show you something we didn't plan to.
Absolutely. So if you can see there in the middle of the screen, it says thresholds apply. middle, in the left to right side of middle, just underneath, that description, thresholds apply and yes is turned on. So first of all, check for your yes or no. And if you click into the little pencil icon to the right of the yes, please, Di. This is where you activate or deactivate those thresholds and where they get set. So you can see there, a minimum threshold applies. Well, that actually was no longer a thing a couple of years ago. And then you've got the maximum threshold applies. And you can see there that it's ticked on, and there's a tick to say use the standard guarantee threshold, which is where then the MYOB are maintaining that threshold for us, or we could untick that and type in our own maximum earnings threshold there. And if those of you who attended our Payday Super webinar previously, Louise was mentioning that from the 1st of July, this screen will change slightly. It'll no longer be a quarterly threshold. It is becoming an annual threshold. So that will change to annual, and it'll have the annual threshold in there. But at this point in time, because we're still this side of the 30 June, it's still a quarterly threshold. Thank you.
I'm getting there.
Yeah,
getting there.
that's all right. Okay, so just for your information, if you are wanting to keep a record, employment termination payment caps. So the ETP cap is going up to 270,000. I think it's 265 at the moment. The base limit cap is rising, and the complete years of service for redundancies and the like, that is also increasing, or for employment termination payments. They get applied automatically. So just to reiterate that, when you work through the termination wizard, if you're needing to terminate someone, so long as you choose the appropriate settings in front screen as to the reason for the termination, payment, the termination notice periods, these thresholds apply automatically where appropriate. The superannuation thresholds or updates, so there's no rate change this financial year as there has been previously. The concessional contribution cap. So these aren't things that apply in the system, that concessional contribution cap. Essentially, the maximum earnings-based threshold ensures people remain within these caps. That's the way that the ATO work them. But you can see there that that's increased, and the non-concessional contribution cap has increased. And the maximum earnings base, when it becomes annual, that is what that'll become. One thing that we didn't mention, we've done it in previous years, but because there's no rate change increase this year, we haven't mentioned it is actually possible for you to override the percentage rate for your superannuation payment. So long as you are not overriding the legislated rate, that 12% will apply automatically. All right, so we'll jump across. So that's really all that's required in terms of the compliance. Then we've got our Payday Super. And so we wanted to reiterate the importance of this. It's 1 July, it's happening. We've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about getting ready for it. So we wanted to raise that here. So are you ready for Payday Super? The key items really to be across is a system upgrade. So the versions that you need to be on are either 2025.2.2 or 2025.1.5. And that just, whether you're on 2025.2 or 0.1, that comes into the normal upgrade cycle that MYOB puts all of their Acumatica sites on. For those of you who might be aware, you'll get 2 upgrades typically a year, one in the first half, one in the second half. And a number of you have already been upgraded: February, March, April, May, a couple even in June. So most of you will already be upgraded. Those of you who were upgraded in February, March or April, you will have a compliance update in the last week of June. So you will get effectively 2 upgrades for this financial year, and yours will just be that compliance one.
And I think it's safe to say that Ben is managing that as a process. So Ben Robinson looks after this for you, and we deal and liaise with MYOB around that. So Ben will deal with that, and if there are any issues, he will let us know, and we will also speak to you, contact you.
Yes, most definitely. And then qualified earnings, you may have heard a lot about. So pay items now need to be updated for what is classed as qualified earnings. We flag that in the pay item liability screen, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. The other thing that's important is accurate employee data. So ensure that you have your correct super fund IDs. Make sure that your employee member numbers are recorded in the system and they are correct. So if you're not currently using Acumatica to create your batch files, either to use the MYOB Pay Super service or to upload to your clearinghouse, please go through, double check that the information is maintained, it's accurate, particularly around super funds merging and so on over the past year and more.
And just a note on that, the Medicare Super or the ATO Super, or what was it that they used to have, that platform?
The ATO Small Business Clearinghouse
is no longer available, so you need to make sure that you've got a superannuation platform as part of your payroll subscription. You get access to MYOB's superannuation platform, so you should be taking advantage of that.
Absolutely, yep. And very importantly, for those of you that are still using the ATO Super Clearinghouse, not only is it no longer an option for you to use 1st of July, you cannot log in from 1st of July. So it is highly recommended by the ATO. Hop in now, obtain as much information, print reports, grab your screenshots, any of the data that you want to keep a record of. I don't know exactly what that might be. That might be a discussion for your accountants. But yes, you will be locked out from that at the end of 30 June. So please make sure, and that you have considered another clearinghouse. The other thing that you need to consider is your cash flow position, keeping in mind, for those of you, I know a number of clients have already transitioned to paying their superannuation as part of their pay run, getting into the process of it, which is wonderful. For those of you that haven't, for whatever reason that may be, completely fine, but be mindful that come 1 July, you will have June's superannuation that's payable, which is still based on the current requirements around paying by the 21st of July. So you've got those 3 weeks to pay the June month or quarter, but you will be paying July's already based on that pay run. So in July, you will have effectively 2 months worth of, or maybe even 4, a quarter plus the July month in that period. And then review the clearinghouse. So in relation to this, we've spoken about your MYOB Pay Super service. It's part of your subscription. Whatever clearinghouse, if you are transitioning, test it early. Make sure that you're comfortable with the process. Make sure everything that's working nice and smoothly. That you don't, if it's not the MYOB Pay Super service, make sure that you're you can upload a SAF file that uploads successfully, that the data processes from it, that there's no questions back from your clearinghouse that they may have either with the file or the data that you're providing. And similarly, if you are moving to MYOB's Pay Super service, particularly if you would like to move to Pay Super and you haven't used it previously, please let us know early. What MYOB actually have to manually switch that on for you. They do need to actually manually register you for the Pay Super service. Then you actually have to log in yourself once you're registered and set up those settings. So what bank account, limits, who are the authorisers, how many people authorising. It's a little bit involved. And particularly MYOB are getting slammed at the moment with these requests. So what was previously taking a day or two is now taking a week. I know that they're actively, I received an email, I logged something with them just the other day with the Pay Super service team. And they responded saying, look, there is a bit of a delay. They are actively trying to get more people into that team to speed things up, but please consider timelines on that.
Yep.
So just, yeah, with that one. So if we could
and also when you're doing this, just keep in mind that it's a financial instrument, and so it has to abide by all the Australian laws relating to financial instruments, which is why they have to collect so much information. It's like setting up another bank account, put your house on the line, whatever. Not quite, but sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Di, could we just have a look, please, at the pay item liability screen? Now, I did make some changes, so we are going to have to refresh it. You might need to refresh it. So we've got in here, you can see the, thank you, the liable for qualifying earnings column. No, that's okay. For those of you that are on a compliant version, so if you're still waiting for your compliance version, you've had your Feb, March, April, and haven't had your compliance one because it's last week of June,
Sorry,
You
I
won't
should have done
see this
this.
column just yet.
Sorry, Tonya, I should have done this earlier.
No, that's okay. I should have reminded you. That's okay.
So
So
that's
you can see, yes, we have the new column. Now,
we just need some data now.
so when you cross over to that version, that column, as we saw it before, if you were quick enough, was completely empty. It wasn't set automatically. We had thought and hoped that MYOB would copy what was ever flagged as liable for super across automatically into that field. The upgrade doesn't do that. You do need to make sure that you tick it on. So in most instances, I didn't go too far down. I only went so far.
Okay, I'll keep
in
to
my
the top
updating
then.
data. In most instances, whatever is liable for superannuation is also liable for qualified earnings. We will have a link for you for an ATO website that will do a comparison on what are the key items you would normally have in a pay run, and they will actually identify what would be one and not the other. And we've also had that in our previous Payday Super webinars if you happen to have that link already. But any questions, again, we can provide some guidance with what information is available, but ultimately it's a tax agent ATO type question.
Just a silly question, and because you know, I like to ask silly questions. What's the likelihood of something being liable for super but not being liable, or vice versa, and not then being liable for qualified earnings?
Oh, very, very minimal. So one of the examples given was some awards allow employees a top-up superannuation. So they've only worked so many hours, they get X dollars of superannuation, but their award says they must be paid a minimum value of superannuation per month. That top-up is not qualified earnings for when you record that. Please double check that. I might have it the other way around. It's such an obscure instance of where one's one and not the other. On saying that, I was going through this with a client the other day, and overtime or overtime that's related to leave loading, or leave loading that could be clearly seen as to a loss of overtime as the reason, is not super but is qualified earnings or something like that. So again, that is in the ATO website.
And so potentially there's more things that are qualifying in earnings rather than being qualified for super. So you're likely to have more tick boxes in the qualified earnings than what you're likely to have, than you may have in the superannuation.
Yes.
So you probably need to tick some more on if you need it. And
you need to be aware, the government has explained that superannuation is now calculated on qualified earnings, not ordinary time earnings. So it will change your, actually, this is just going to say, Di, what we just said was perhaps incorrect. It may change what you are going to be basing your superannuation calculation on. Now, the liable for super tick box is what will calculate superannuation. So if it's, so yeah, really I think we'll find the two are in sync, but please double check. The liable for super will do the calculation within Acumatica. The qualified earnings is what needs to send off to the ATO through single touch payroll.
Just be really, check it out. I think this is one of those things where we sort of can't take responsibility for it. And I actually thought that when people did get an upgrade, that liable for qualified earnings would be automatically ticked for everything that was liable for superannuation. So I was kind of surprised to see that ours wasn't ticked. Or did they make a change?
They had told us that would be the case, but the several sites I've seen so far, that has not been the situation, and we've had to
actually go through and tick them.
My aren't BAS agents, so they can't.
Well,
I suppose
exactly. That's the point. Yeah, exactly. Back to the slides.
Yes, please.
Let me just find that.
Oh, we're at time.
Well, we'll keep going because we've still got another.
We do.
Another few slides to go through.
So I will try and talk these quickly. Superannuation batches. So actually, Di, if you want to open up the screen, I'll talk to the screen as much as to the slide. I'll just be super quick if I can. So create superannuation batch. If you are using this, wonderful. We highly recommend you do. If you are not yet using this, please consider doing so. It'll actually collate the pay runs for the quarters, the months you've already been doing, pay run by pay run moving forward, and it will say, hey, yes, I've batched this. I've paid it. And so that when you then do your next superannuation payment, it helps you keep track of adjustments that you may have processed that you need to make an adjustment to the superannuation, or confirming that yes, you've done that that prior superannuation payment for that pay run. So yes, it does take you through. It'll do some checking for you. It'll validate the superannuation funds and look for merge funds. It'll make sure that everyone at least has a super fund and member ID on their account. It does a little bit of checking on the fund IDs, looks to make sure there's no duplications that might cause us some grief. But importantly, yes, it does that batch tracking. It is also, if you'd like to use a MYOB Pay Super service, this is you go here and then you push it off to MYOB Pay Super. If you're not using the super service, but you are using another clearinghouse, you can create this batch and export out a SAF file to upload to your clearinghouse. And then that will just save you time and having to rekey, particularly if you're doing this weekly. So if you haven't used it before and you would like to, keep in mind we do recommend you need to do a bit of a tidy up to make sure you don't accidentally pay anything historical when you've already paid it.
Yes. We've got a procedure for that we often hand out as well.
Yes, we do, definitely. We'll jump over to the next slide, multi-company and superannuation batches. So that superannuation batch screen, it does not currently support multiple companies. We've spoken about this before. That is coming. MYOB hope to have that released at the end of July, early August. At this date, that super batch screen, if you're doing SAF file exports, it will create an individual export per company. If you're doing MYOB Pay Super, it will send one super batch to MYOB Pay Super, and your Pay Super service is linked to one bank account. So if you're happy for it to have multiple companies come out of one bank account for your superannuation, you could push that across. That's really the key, is that super batch screen will do one payment. So if you're using Acumatica for your finance as well, that means one payment in your batch payment, and it won't handle the multi-company intercompany loans. So just be aware of that. But as I said, that is coming.
Second last slide.
Yep, second last slide. The one more thing for you to be aware of is the financial year in your master financial year calendar in Acumatica. So again, people that are using this for finance and have been using Acumatica for a while, they're probably very familiar with it. Those that are new, particularly Acumatica payroll only sites, this may be a bit of a new concept. The years don't exist in Acumatica until you set them up in the master financial calendar. You can set them up in the future in advance. You could put in several years worth, but you do lock and unlock those periods as well. So just check. First of all, what we probably should have had there is check with your system administrator or your financial controller. They've probably got it all under control. I should probably have swapped those little boxes around. You may not need to do anything. If you do, check if you need to create the year. It may already be there and you just need to open those periods, or you may need to actually create the financial year. And then, as I've said, future years can be opened in advance, or created and opened in advance. And you can, if you choose, lock prior periods as well. And it's just a bit of security to make sure, yep, I finalised that year and we've locked that down so there's no more changes. For those of you that are familiar with this process, there is not a way to close the period for payroll alone. Payroll's closing is linked to the accounts payable ledger. So again, if you're using the system for both finance and payroll, you can only lock down payroll if you're ready to lock down finance.
Would you like to have a look at that screen?
Yes, please. So this is our financial calendar. So we can see there that the 2027 financial year does already exist. We can see the months already down the page there, and the status is currently open. So
if we wanted to, we could go ahead and create 2028 or 2029. Again, just whatever you need. It will populate it and say, well, there's 12 periods, because we've always had 12 periods and we typically always have 12 periods. It just follows on from that as a process. So it's quite simple. But if you do try and create a pay that is dated the 1st of July 2026, it may come up and say you don't have a financial period. And this is where you'd go. So just type up the top, search for master financial calendar, or just master, think that's pretty.
Mm.
Actually, if I do a search for master, let's just see what happens.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
perfect.
There we go. So those of you who haven't used this search bar at the top, we use it all the time, and search for it and find it that way. Now, I think that's it for now. Let me just go to this and say thank you so much for coming. Thank you for attending. Have a look at our YouTube channel. Any videos or webinars that we do, we actually do record them and we do actually upload them into that environment. So it is worth your while actually popping on there, because everything we do from webinars, we always record and put it there. There will also be a blog post which will just outline some of this information as well. So you can also see that on our website as well. We did have one last question that I don't think we've answered.
That is correct, yes. So
do you want to deal with that?
Yeah, also the question is, if there's been an overpayment in the current financial year and it's agreed to be repaid over subsequent pays, how best can that be managed? That really depends on the situation of what that overpayment is for, how that is to be classified and repaid. There are a couple of different options, and it may have implications on the employee's tax and the business's tax position. So it might be more of an accountant question. And then once we have that clarity, we can assist you in the setup of those pay items. I know some people have managed it as an after-tax entry, so more like a staff loan, really, so that it doesn't impact gross wages, PAYG, superannuation, that kind of thing. I don't know, again, not being a tax agent, whether there's a fringe benefits tax implication with that or anything else. So there's a couple of considerations there.
Yeah, I know our external accountant doesn't like us having any staff loans open at the end of the financial year. He prefers that we clean everything up, but it looks as though you're not going to have that as an opportunity. So you might want to have a conversation with them. And look, with your external accountants, if they're directing you to do things and you're not comfortable with them, we're more than happy to come on a three-way Teams meeting with them and actually have that conversation with you and talk to them about what the limitations are and what we can and can't do to make it work with STP. Because a lot of external accountants have never, ever done a payroll. And so they're not familiar with STP or the impacts in dealing with STP. Fair comment? Anyone want to add to that?
No, I think that's good.
Yep.
I will, just a couple of people put in the comment, I have already answered. The STP reconciliation screen that we went through previously, yes, it is an Acacia inquiry screen that we wrote.
Is it
to
this
be
one?
honest, yep, that one. We actually based that off the pay activity detail data report, which is actually an inquiry screen. So Dianne, on the left-hand side under payroll reports, please. The pay activity detail data. So just, yep, that one. So the inquiry screen, we actually used this as the basis. We just added in that ATO category columns that Louise and Di showed you earlier on in their presentation. So you can use that one. There is also on the right-hand column there, underneath government, there's an STP transaction data generic inquiry screen, which MYOB have written to assist with that STP reconciliation. I always, I guess, lean back towards the pay activity. Well, ours, yes, because we know how it works.
Because we're used to it. We know how it works.
The pay activity detailed data, I use that usually for everything, but we can also load up the Acacia inquiry screen for you.
So again, like to say thank you for all of you who have attended. Thanks for spending some time with us. We love running these sessions. They take a little bit of time to put it together, but we love seeing people in the room, and we're very grateful to have you all in the room with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.